Good morning, everyone. We have been studying Matthew chapter 23, and Jesus has been talking directly now to the Pharisees. He had been talking to the Pharisees, condemning them, and now he's talking to the crowds, and he's telling them why the Pharisees are condemned. And we're starting in verse 23 of chapter 23 of Matthew. And verse 23 of Matthew chapter 23 reads, Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye have to have done, and not leave the other undone. Ye blind guides, which strain at a gnat, and swallow a camel. Their tithing was meticulous and noteworthy, but hypocritical, because it served to soothe the guilt of their neglect of the weightier matters of the law. It is both possible and common to be distracted with relatively trivial matters while a lost world perishes. The weightier matters do not refer to the more difficult or harder, but to the more central and more decisive, as written by Carson. Jesus gave a cursory description of these weightier matters of the law with the words justice and mercy and faith. This phrase recalls the summary of true religion in contrast to extravagant sacrifice that was in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, written by France. In other words, is that they made a big deal about their gifts to the temple. It's like we've heard from previous chapters how they would walk in and have a parade behind them. And they'd come in, and there's a large bag of gold or coins, and they would dump it into the treasury. And so they wanted to make a big spectacle about it. But in reality, they didn't care about what was really important. You give because you love to give, not because you want to show. You give because it's important. It's a part of helping the temple stay together. But when it came to the most important part, them showing mercy, them turning people to the Lord, they didn't care. And so they did this, they gave more because they felt guilty, but they didn't want to make any changes in their own lives. When Jesus talks about blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel, Jesus illustrates their folly with a humorous picture of a man so committed to a kosher diet that he would not swallow a gnat because it was not bled properly in accord with kosher regulations. That I'll swallow a gnat, but only if it's been kosher. Only kosher gnats. I don't want to swallow a bug, period. Yet the same man would swallow a whole camel instead. This is a humorous picture which must have raised a laugh, of a man carefully straining his wine through gauze to avoid swallowing a microscopic insect, yet cheerfully swallowing a camel. It is a picture of a man who has completely lost his sense of proportion. The most important matters. Moving on to verse 25. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you may clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. Thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. The scribes and Pharisees are satisfied with the superficial cleansing and the appearance of righteousness. While greatly concerned with their outward appearance of righteousness, they were concerned with an inside. They were not concerned with an inside full of sin and corruption. Jesus did not call them to choose between outer righteousness and inner righteousness. He called them to be concerned with both, but to first address the inside. True outward righteousness starts on the inside. And that's true. We see a lot today with virtue signaling, that people are good to posture, especially on social media. They'll tell you how righteous they are. And like I always said, it's easy to be compassionate with somebody else's on somebody else's dime. It's easy to be compassionate when you have no sacrifice to it. And you look all wonderful and everybody praises you because you're so compassionate. But what are you really like? You know, it's like this one person was talking, he said, if a person was a robber and a thief, would you allow them into your house? Of course not. You would defend your home. He says, so what's the point of posturing on social media and making big praises to crowds when you yourself would not allow yourself to go through what you're allowing others to go through right now? And the thing is, it's always easy to look righteous, to put on the suit, to be walking around with your head held high, and to talk about how much you love Jesus. But it's another thing to truly live for the Lord. Moving on to verse 27. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. It was the custom of the Jews of that time to whitewash the tombs in the city of Jerusalem before Passover, so that no one would touch one accidentally, thus making themselves ceremonially unclean. Jesus said these religious leaders were like these whitewashed tombs, pretty on the outside, but dead on the inside. You know, they think it's like you can whitewash a tomb all you want, but guess what? It's still a tomb. You know, it doesn't change the fact they're a dead person on the inside, but it gave the appearance of cleanness. And the thing is that people could walk around and brag and do all this stuff, but the truth is, if they're not caring for the matters of the heart, if they're not trying to fix themselves first, nothing else matters. Paul called the high priest a whitewashed wall in Acts chapter 23:3. Men might see them as righteous, but God did not. God is never fooled by what we show on the outside. He sees what we actually are, not what we appear to be to other men. Moving on to verse 29. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers of them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. For ye fill ye up, then measure up your fathers, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. How can ye escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them ye shall scourge in your synagogues and persecute them city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias the son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. The religious leaders professed to venerate dead prophets, but they rejected living prophets. In doing so, they showed that they really were the children of those who murdered the prophets in the days of old. Ye are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. When we express the same thought, when we think, I wouldn't have denied Jesus like the other disciples did, well, I wouldn't have done that, you don't know what you would have done in that if you were put in that situation. Jesus prophesied about how these leaders would complete the rejection of the prophets their fathers began by persecuting his disciples, whom he would send to them. No amount of argument could rob these words of their terrible import. They stand upon the page forevermore, speaking to us of the wrath of the Lamb. Spurgeon would write, this is one of the most terrible sentences that ever fell from Christ's lips. It is like his message to Judas, that thou doest do quickly. This crowning sin would fill up the measure of their fathers' guilt and bring down upon them the righteous judgment of God. When speaking about serpents and brood of vipers, this phrase has the idea of family of the devil. These religious leaders took an unmerited pride in their heritage, thinking they were spiritual sons of Abraham. Instead, they were more like the sons of the devil, not of Abraham. Jesus spoke so strongly about these religious leaders for two reasons. First, he did not want others to be deceived by them. Second, he loved these men. These men were the farthest from God, and they needed to be warned of coming judgment. What Jesus really wanted was their repentance, not their judgment. Even though they had made themselves the enemy of God, Jesus still stretched forth to try to warn them, to try to get them to turn from their wicked ways. When Jesus spoke of the righteous blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, Jesus spoke of all the righteous martyrs of the Old Testament. Abel was clearly the first, and in the way that the Hebrew Bible was arranged, Zechariah was the last. 2 Chronicles is the last book of the Hebrew Bible, and Zechariah's story is found in 2 Chronicles chapter 24, 20 through 22. Abel's blood cried out, and Zechariah asked that his blood be remembered. There is a problem with the description of Zechariah as the son of Berechiah, because the 2 Chronicles text describes him as the son of Jehoiada. Clark summarized the best resolutions to this problem. First, that double names were frequent among the Jews, meaning that it was common for people to be named the same name multiple times for different people. Second, that the names of Jehoiada and Berechiah have much the same meaning, the praise of pleasing Jehovah. And other critics say, well, that's going to be false. This shows that the Bible is not true, blah, blah, blah. But they said that everything always ends up checking out in the end. One can almost feel, as written by Morgan, the withering force of his strong and mighty indignation. Indignation directed not against the people, but against their false guides. And yet behind it all is his heart. And the woes merge into a wail of agony, the cry of a mother over her lost child. The truth is, Jesus never once wanted people to reject him. Even those that made themselves his enemy, Jesus still reached out for them. Just like today, those that hate the Lord the most, God is still fighting for that soul. You know, that doesn't mean that person will get saved, but God will not stop fighting for every lost soul until the time is up. And that's why it's important for us as Christians that just because someone says they don't want God, and I know, Wanda, you're dealing with a man right now. You know, just because they say they don't want God, they don't want it, doesn't mean it's up. It's not up, it's not over until it's over. You know, my mom's dad, my grandfather, Happy Lloyd, well, Leonard, but he went by Lloyd, he hated Lloyd. You know, I'm like, well, but I would have chose Leonard over Lloyd, I promise you. Lloyd's like an 18th century name for some farmer, but Leonard, it's like something, but he didn't like it. But, it was literally the day before he died, he gave his life to Jesus. So the truth is, you never know when somebody's going to get saved. You never know when someone's listening. And so it's always important for us to be a witness. Even when people say, well, I don't want to hear it, still be that witness. Don't be antagonistic, but we are to be that witness. And that concludes today's lesson.